I have this fascination with why two people who are both intelligent, when faced with the same evidence, would draw different conclusions. But I wanted to take today and kind of go through how I got from fundamentalist Christian to, I suppose the only proper word would be evangelical atheist. It's hard to say that I'm just an atheist when obviously I'm, perpetually on TV talking about why. And so background, I was raised in a normal Southern Baptist home, or in Missouri. My parents were regular Southern Baptist Christian people, as were my grandparents. Went to church, was, drugged to church, I suppose, as a little kid, like a lot of people were. And around the age of 5 or so, at a revival meeting, I walked down the aisle along with a bunch of other people to accept Jesus into my heart, because everybody wants to go to heaven. And in retrospect, looking back on that, it might explain why I have such an objection to people indoctrinating children into beliefs at an early age. I'm not saying it's you teach your kids right from wrong and morals and everything, but I've heard it said in much the same way that we don't refer to a 5-year-old as a 5-year-old Republican or a 5-year-old Democrat. It's wrong to call them a 5-year-old Southern Baptist or a 5-year-old Catholic or whatever else, until you've actually reached the age of reason and been presented with the information, the arguments. Sure, you can still believe, but you can also believe in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or any number of things. You haven't actually processed and considered the evidence. When we talk about atheism on the show, you can be an atheist for all kinds of reasons. A lot of people, make accusations against some of us. You don't really disbelieve in God. You believe in him, you just don't acknowledge him, or you're mad at him, or something bad happened to you and now you're ticked off at God and you're out to get anybody who still wants to believe. And I'm sure there are plenty of people out there calling themselves atheists who may fit that kind of description, because in much the same way that everybody doesn't become a Christian for the same reasons, or a Buddhist or a Hindu or Muslim or whatever, you don't always become an atheist for the same reason. I am an atheist for a very different reason, and as I go through this, I think it'll be kind of clear that I'm definitely not one of those who got mad at God and looked for a way to write God out of my life or tick off the people who do believe in God. So I was pretty much a normal kid after that. Had accepted Jesus as my Savior at about the age of 5. Went to church regularly along with everybody else, and there was a period of time in my teens where I was actually more active than my parents were. It was no longer an issue of, okay, you're getting dressed and you're going to church. I was in church Sunday morning, Sunday night. Monday night was visitation. Tuesday night was, I believe, the youth group, or maybe that was Thursday night. Wednesday night was normal services. Basically, almost every day of the week, there was something going on. And I was involved. It was completely out of choice, and we would not only do like summer camp, Baptist camp, whatever, we did mission outreach stuff. We would take a bus over to Illinois and help repair and rebuild an old church, and good charitable things and witnessing and visiting with people who visited the church on Sunday, and that was all important to me because there was no doubt I was a true believer in doing what I needed to do. I was not the perfect church-going teen. I got in my fair share of trouble for all kinds of things, like any other teen. But to say that my experience was atypical would be, in a way, right, and in a way, wrong. It was probably more religious than the average person. There was a period of time in my teens where I kind of doubted my faith, because at that time, you realize, hey, I got saved at the age of 5. Did I really know what I was doing? Am I really saved? Did I do it right the first time? So you do it again. And I can't tell you how many Christians I've talked to who have gone through that experience multiple times. In my early teens, I recognized that, wow, I needed to do this again, or I probably should, or, and even in typical Christian parlance, it's you rededicate your life, which is kind of a safety check to make sure you've absolutely done it right. And then they have the another term for people who fall away from the religion, and those are backsliders. And if you backslide for long enough, then it's time for another rededication. And it's this constant fight with reality. And the reality is that in a lot of cases, no matter how much you believe or think you believe, reality creeps in. You're faced with the harshness of life. And while Christians might, attribute that sort of trouble to the devil tempting you, from my view now, it's just the nature thing. It's just human nature and interaction that creates these problems and distractions. I mean, once you start a regular job after school, you have less time for things. In my case, it was the Navy. I joined the Navy shortly after high school because I wasn't going to have enough money to go to college, and because I had been particularly stubborn and lazy during high school, which is, of course, is something I regret because, now I can't read enough books or learn enough things. But at the time, it was easier to sleep through sociology and take the test at the end of the week and hope I got enough right than it was to actually pay attention. But I went ahead and joined the Navy, partly for lack of other options. They had a good nuclear power program with big bonuses, and I was wanting to get married, and that seemed like the way to go. That period of time I don't mention because the Navy in and of itself was crucial. It represented a separation from the constant reinforcement that I'd had before. And I think in any journey from religiousness to atheism or agnosticism, or however you end up characterizing yourself, you have to have that separation. If you're in church every week, several times a week, and you're always around church-going people, you have a level of constant reinforcement where you're feeling you belong to something, and you're with a whole lot of other people who, anytime you doubt, you can just look at them and, well, they believe it, so clearly my doubts must not be, reasonable. So during that time in the Navy, I did normal things, and I still believed it, but it was like a cooling off period that I think everybody needs in a sense. Nobody comes straight out of a Sunday morning service, reads a book, and becomes an atheist, or at least nobody I've met. But after the Navy, which I was in the Navy for about 8 years, I left and I moved to Austin and decided I was working for Dell at the time. Decided that I needed to get my life back on track with regard to religion and Jesus. And so I started considering things and began to have doubts about what I believed and why. Did this really make sense? Was this, what about my belief on abortion or homosexuality or creation versus evolution or any number of other things? Were these things really right? It became much more important for me to not only know and accept those beliefs on faith, but to actually have good support for them. And some Christians might immediately say, well, that's where you went wrong, because you just got to take it all on faith. But something in me at some point changed where faith at that point was not necessarily enough. And later it changed to where faith was not desirable at all. And the good reason for that is that beliefs based on faith are the riskiest beliefs you can possibly hold. If you hold beliefs based on substantial, real evidence, sound logic and reason, you're always at a little bit of risk because at any time anything could be wrong. Science doesn't provide 100% proven facts on anything. It provides theories that are the best answer we can come up with at this time, and they're subject to change. And there's some of them that we think are pretty settled, and we're never going to see anything that completely flips them upside down with a complete replacement. But there's always refining going on. And beliefs based on faith and fundamentalism in particular, where your beliefs are not allowed to be changed. There's a famous thing that once said, God said it, I believe it, and that settles it. And then somebody noticed that, well, whether or not you believe it doesn't really matter. So then they changed it to God said it, and I believe it. But that really didn't fix anything because there still has to be the belief that God actually said it.